So we have Erin Jackson here, and she is the creator of Inspire Sante. And she is really focused on awareness, creating awareness around pelvic pain disorders. And she's also a lawyer who is focusing on policy solutions to help people suffering from chronic pain and illness. And next we have Kendall Rayburn, who is a BlogHer Health alum. So you may have seen her on the stage before. Welcome, Kendall. And she is a blogger and influencer and lifestyle writer who really talks about a lot of things, plus-size fashion, motherhood, body positivity, positivity in general, and also the experience that she's had with the chronic illness endometriosis. And then we also have Carly Anderson, who happens to be good friends with Kendall.
She is.
Who started Just Wear the Suit, and her focus is really about body confidence and passing that along to kids and her daughter. And finally, Dani Donovan, who's a designer and illustrator, and who started out with this viral storytelling flowchart about ADHD after being diagnosed as an adult. And it immediately went viral. I think it was immediate. She may be able to tell us a little more about that. And now Neurodiverse Squad has become this big thing. And if you guys aren't familiar with it, you should absolutely go find out about it, because these flowcharts, for anyone who either has ADHD or knows someone who has ADHD, these things speak to you like nothing else. All right, guys, so thank you all for being here. So let's jump right in. So, and this is just for all of you, jump in as you would like. Why do you think it's important to use your platform to inspire and help others? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So I think it's important to use our platforms for good because, like, for instance, for me, I have a chronic illness. I have endometriosis. And the more openly I talk about it and share it with others, I feel like it almost gives them permission to do the same. And sharing, like, every part of my story, even the embarrassing parts, like me throwing up in the bathroom about an hour ago because I was in so much pain and nauseous. And so thank you to everybody in the bathroom. You guys were great. But I'm, like, sharing that makes other people feel comfortable. It makes them know that they're not alone in what they're suffering with. And that's why it's important to share your truth.
I think that social media gets a lot of flack these days, right? We hear a lot about the negative side of everything being on the internet. But the positive side of that is when you have a struggle, whatever it is, it can be very isolating. And social media allows us to connect with people that we wouldn't connect with otherwise. So you may feel like you're the only person struggling with fill in the blank issue, but then you look on the internet and see there's all these other people that are just like you that you never would have connected with otherwise. So I think it allows us to feel not alone.
I think that the community aspect is obviously really important. Building a community of people who have felt isolated, who have not seen their struggles illustrated before, talked about before, maybe stigmatized, or if they tried to talk about their problems, you know, being told that it's not that serious, or have you tried yoga, whatever it is, you know, and not feeling taken seriously, or being given advice on how to change yourself versus having someone who can just understand and have that conversation about, like, yes, that is really hard. I'm not going to try and give you advice on how to fix it, but we can discuss and emotionally process that. So I think it's important.
Yeah, and I think I'd echo what all of you said, and don't want to restate it because I agree completely. I think it can also be really cathartic for the sharer in terms of when you don't get the empathy or the support that you would expect from your loved ones or from those in your life when going through this stuff, which sometimes it's not what you want it to be. You can find a community of people who can support you, and then you can connect with other people who can support you and you can really amplify your message. And I think that's something that's really cool, because when you share, you realize other women are sharing, and then you can create your own community of women who are sharing their stories, and that is extremely powerful.
As we can see from looking around this room. What inspired you to open up about your own experience and advocate for others, to all of you?
I can go ahead and start. So my intro into ADHD and neurodivergent advocacy was a total accident. One of my friends had been talking openly about therapy at work, and I had never heard anyone talk about therapy. Like, I'd never talked about it with any of my close friends. And my new coworkers were talking about it like they were talking about, going to the doctor. And so I felt comfortable sharing that I had ADHD with them, and they didn't judge me for it. And it kind of became, say a joke, but I could talk about the parts of me that some of it is funny. And so how I tell stories in the backwards way that I finally get to my point, if I can find it, is what prompted me to make this flowchart. And I didn't think of it as like, I'm going to be this ADHD advocate. I'm going to post this on here so people can feel seen. It was just like, this is a joke with my friends. And it blew up so big very quickly. And it was so clear that these people have felt invisible for so long. No one is talking to them. No, I'm filling a void. I didn't create this. This was already here, and people needed to hear it and feel seen. And so I think that what was the question? I did the thing. Okay.
What inspired you to open up about your own experience?
So
the story of my life.
The storytelling
have to
flowchart.
know.
I did it. It's ironic. All right. Next.
Okay, slightly different take on that. So I was a teacher. I taught elementary school here in Los Angeles for 15 years, and I also have a now 6-year-old. I looked at these young girls that I saw starting in kindergarten and going on to 5th grade and graduating on, and something happened to them. Somewhere between like 3rd and 5th grade, insecurity like snuck in there. I saw the change happen, class after class after class, and as a mother, it terrified me. I felt like I wanted these kids and my own child to see a conversation that I just didn't see happening. And I didn't feel like it was something I could say was missing if I was unwilling to have the conversation myself.
For me, it was just, I felt incredibly alone. I was going through all of these different surgeries for endometriosis. I was diagnosed at 23, and it was really bad. And the doctors said, if you and your husband want to have kids, you have to do it right now. So I popped a couple suckers out.
They're very cute.
I had my uterus removed. 3 months later, my pain came back. They went in, took my ovaries. 3 months later, my pain came back. It's like an ongoing cycle. But I share because it's not that often you meet somebody in their 20s that's in menopause. I'm 32 now and still in it. And I just felt alone, and I just needed my own community. I was in my bed with my heating pad in so much pain. I couldn't do anything, but having this group of women online that supported me and knew what I was going through was so, so beneficial to me. And me being a part and sharing my story, I was just doing what they were doing. So that's what built the community, and I lean on them still, like to this day.
So I had, my pain specifically was vulvar pain and pain with sex, and no one talks about that. Yeah. So when I was going through it, my entire 20s, I'm in my mid-30s now. I forget exactly where in my mid-30s with regularity. So around that age. And I thought that I was alone. The whole time I was dealing with it, I thought I was alone. And then I recovered. And like you mentioned, I'm a healthcare attorney. I was talking at a healthcare conference, which I do in my professional capacity. And afterwards, a bunch of healthcare practitioners came up to me and are in tears and are like, this was my story. I didn't know anyone else dealt with this. And I'm like, really? Like, I'm speaking at a healthcare conference. So I started just sharing my story and just putting it out there so that if anyone was dealing with this, at the time it was pelvic pain. Most recently it's been IVF, which I realized also people don't talk about, but like everybody has gone through IVF who I'm Facebook friends with, that it's just important so that when someone Googles something, they don't just get scary stuff. They get an authentic voice talking about their experience in a way that gives them hope.
What's your advice to anyone out there struggling to get the answers they need about a medical condition? And again, this is something I think you all could probably speak to, but Dani, do you want to start with that one?
The hardest part, so I didn't get diagnosed until I was in college, and I didn't go in saying, I think I have ADHD, I went in pretty much to say, hey, I think my antidepressants aren't working. And finding out, oh, okay, like, tell me a little bit about your childhood. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Okay. And through those stories, she, said, I think you have ADHD, but my doctor had ADHD. And there are so many people in my life, now that I've started making these comics, 2 of my best friends, my mother, others a coworker have come to me and said, your comics resonated with me so much. And I never even thought that it might be ADHD. And so, but they had to go, even some of these people were in therapy and they hadn't been said, hey, you know what, you might have this. It wasn't until they felt empowered enough to say, hey, I've done some research. This sounds like me. I'm not self-diagnosing, but like, can we look into this? And sometimes that's what it takes, is like advocating for yourself, doing the research yourself. Again, like still talking to someone. But if it sounds like you, it's worth having the conversation. You can't always wait for your doctor to bring it up.
It's a great point. And Erin, the experience that you've had, I feel like this is also something that you could speak to. What do you do when you can't get the answers that you need?
It's really hard, but you have to continue advocating for yourself. So what that means is figuring out the communication method that is comfortable for you, sort of be damned what might be comfortable for your medical provider. So if that's writing down your questions and handing them to them, through my advocacy, I run a nonprofit, Inspire Santé, and we actually have on our website little cards that allow you to just keep them in your wallet, and you can just fill out the questions that you have, like, I have pain with sex, I have this going on, this doesn't feel right. And it says on the front of it, nurse, please give this to my doctor before they come in the room. I'm too embarrassed to bring these things up. So whatever you need to do to communicate it, you need to do it. You need to speak up. And if you feel like you've been misdiagnosed, which I know we were talking about beforehand, sometimes you get a diagnosis and you're like, oh, thank God, finally I got a diagnosis. And then a month later, you're like, I don't think this is right. That's really hard to come back from that position, because now it feels like you're challenging someone in a white coat, which is really scary. So I think advocating.
Kendall, how do you build a community centered around medical issues or hardships while maintaining such an optimistic voice and outlook, which you have done so effectively?
For the optimistic portion, that's just because I have to. Like, I am in pain every day. I've got 2 boys. My oldest has autism. We've got a really busy household. And if I woke up every morning and thought about the pain that I was having and let that take over my day or my mood, that would trickle down to everybody in my family. That would, my son, especially my son with autism, he's really sensitive. So like, he knows when I'm having a bad day. So I have to put that on that face for him to let him know that I'm okay. And just being honest about it, it's something that's like always come really naturally to me. Like, I can have a conversation with anybody. But what was the first part of the question?
How do you build a community centered around things that are difficult?
Just being honest and sharing. And I think people can tell. Like, people can weed out the people that are genuine and the people that aren't. And the people that are being honest about their story. Like, I follow other women with endometriosis, and I just have so much respect for them for putting that out there and for talking about the OBGYN and how, like, it's your second husband, because you get real close to him real quick. And, yeah, that's it.
Most of you share a lot of personal information with your followers. How do you figure out what to share and what stays private? You want to jump in with that one, Erin?
Yeah. So this has been something really important to me throughout the whole trajectory of me sharing my story. So I started out speaking on healthcare law issues, and I continue to do that, and I have a professional face that goes out into the world, interacts with healthcare providers. My husband is my law partner, so I needed to not turn our law firm into an entirely like, let's talk about my vagina sort of speaking circuit thing.
That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, it does, but like,
But no.
yeah, not the right fit. So I have really crafted, and sometimes it's messy, but I have parts of my story that I share, and I share them with authenticity and honesty, and I provide resources, but I give myself permission to keep some parts of myself private. And those are things that there's aspects of my story that I have chosen not to share for various reasons, whether it's because I don't feel comfortable with it, whether it's because it's still something I'm working on, or whether it's because, I think I mentioned when we had a prep call, I don't talk about my husband other than joking about the fact that we work together, because his experience with this, we've been together for over a decade, is not my story to tell. And that's the same case for my friends and how it influenced them, where I feel like I have to draw boundaries, not just for myself and to protect myself, to allow myself to continue sharing, but also because I need to respect the autonomy of those in my life who have chosen to love me and stay with me on this journey, but I don't own their story because they did that.
I think I would highly encourage anyone who is sharing their journey online to be in conversation with the other people in your life about what they're comfortable with, whether it's significant others, friends, parents, if your children are of age to have that conversation. And I think it's something I found I need to keep having constantly. I am a notorious oversharer. I would share everything with everybody. I would tell you all my life story right now. That does not mean everybody in my life feels the same way. So I think I try to have that conversation regularly, because it can also change for certain people where they're comfortable with some parts and then they realize, actually, I don't feel so good about that anymore. So whatever the story is that you are sharing, I encourage you to talk to those people and make sure they're comfortable with the role they have in it.
On that note, for me, I feel most of my ADHD content, and I don't just make comics, I do kind of tweet threads where I, might detail, this is exactly what it feels like to have a panic attack, for my panic attack. And I try really hard to always make sure that I own it, like, I have a hard time with this, not people with ADHD struggle with this. Always trying to keep it centric on, this is my experience, I do not speak for other people. My experience with ADHD is completely individualized to me, and trying to make sure that I keep in mind things like thinking about, talking about parenting, like what was your childhood like growing up? What were your parents like growing up? What did your parents and your teachers do well and didn't do well? And like keeping in mind that I have family who follow me, and like how will they feel about things that I'm saying? So being conscious of everything like that.
All right, guys, we have exactly 40 seconds left, so this is going to be a true little lightning round. Last question. One piece of advice for the community that you advocate for.
Just talk about it. Talk about it with your friends. Talk about it with whoever you feel comfortable, whether it's people who you see day to day, whether it's people who you interact with online. Just talk about what's...
Okay, that just bought us 5 more seconds.
That's it. Talk about it.
Yeah, just share and be honest and speak your truth, and that's all you can do. You never know by you sharing your story, you never know who you're going to touch and who you're going to affect. And like, I've had messages from 16-year-old girls being like, I'm in so much pain on my period. What you said made total sense. I went to my doctor. He thinks I have endometriosis. And like, if I wouldn't have been open to share that in the beginning, who knows?
A slightly different take on the same thing. With permission, since we're talking about people's privacy, I would encourage everyone, this is for myself too, to amplify other women's voices in your community. I think all of us are up here because other women have amplified our voices, and it's so powerful to hear more than one story. So ask them first, but then to share other people's stories in our communities is really important.
Okay. The most important thing that this community, especially with Neurodiverse Squad, has taught me is that the self-acceptance that comes along with, not just knowing you're not alone, but truly not feeling ashamed, because you're not broken. you're different. There's not, say, something wrong with you. You're not a defective version of normal. You are just as normal as anybody else, but you have struggles that others can't understand. And so to not think about, talking about difficult things as like, oh, poor me, I'm looking for attention. I don't think of it as me trying to, complain into the void. It's mostly a processing thing for myself. So I think that, like, if you've got things to deal with, and that you need that to, if you're a verbal processor like me, that you can benefit others at the same time that you're helping yourself.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you all so much for being here and for the incredible, important work that you're doing.